April 19th. The Gulf of Oman, an Iranian tanker called the Tuska, keeps moving after 6 hours of radio warnings. The USS Spruance puts 5-inch rounds straight into its engine room. The 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit climbs aboard a 270-meter ship that is now silent in the water. Hold that picture for a second, because 8 days later, Iran answered. On April 27th, a written proposal from Tehran arrived in Washington. Iran offered to open the Strait of Hormuz. Iran offered to end the war. And buried inside it sits a deliberate, surgical absence. The nuclear program is pushed to a later stage. Subscribe and turn the bell on right now, because the next 72 hours decide whether Trump takes this offer or restarts the bombing. And drop one word in the comments: peace or stall. I want to read where you stand before Washington responds. Now strip the diplomacy off the page and you can see the real shape of it. Iran is offering to give up the visible crisis and protect the invisible weapon. The Strait you can see on a map, the uranium you cannot. Washington's demand has been sitting on the table since the war began: suspend enrichment for at least 10 years and physically move Iran's enriched stockpile out of the country before the strikes. Inspectors had already verified more than 400 kilograms of uranium enriched to 60% inside Iran. 60% is one short technical step from a bomb. None of that material has been counted by an outside inspector since the strike started. Trump's red line on this has not moved a millimeter. The end of Iranian enrichment inside Iran. The White House restated it on the record. And that line is the only reason the war happened in the first place. Read the proposal again with those two facts in your head. The document does not mention enrichment. It does not mention the stockpile. It does not mention centrifuges, inspectors, or removal. It says open the strait, lift the blockade, end the war, trust us on the uranium. That is why Trump killed the Islamabad trip the same weekend the offer arrived. Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner had their 18-hour flight canceled mid-schedule. He told reporters the Iranians can call if they want. That was not logistics. That was a refusal, dressed as a shrug. And while the diplomats stall, the United States Navy is doing the talking. Operation Epic Fury is now consuming 15% of the entire deployed United States Navy. 16 warships, 11 destroyers, 1 aircraft carrier, 1 littoral combat ship, 3 amphibious assault ships, over 10,000 personnel, more than 100 fighter jets pointed at one country's coastline. That is not a posture. That is the kind of pressure a superpower only builds when it intends to collect something specific. By April 25th, Central Command had turned back 37 vessels. The aircraft carrier USS George H.W. Bush sailed in the long way around, past the Cape of Good Hope, because the Houthis still hold the Red Sea at risk. Think about that for a second. The most powerful navy on earth took a 19th century shipping route to enforce a 21st century blockade. The willingness to pay that cost is itself the message Tehran was supposed to read. Tehran read it perfectly. Since February 28th, Iran has moved 11.7 million barrels of crude through the strait, every single one of them bound for China. Every barrel that does not move is revenue Iran cannot collect, and a customer Iran cannot keep. The proposal did not arrive because Tehran wanted peace. It arrived because Tehran is running out of storage and out of buyers at the same time. And there is a reason China sits at the center of this. 37.7% of every barrel that exits Hormuz lands in a Chinese port, the largest national share on the planet. So when Tehran offers to open the strait, the real translation is colder. And the squeeze on our biggest customer, and watch the only leverage you actually have collapse with it. That is the trick inside the offer. It is not a concession. It is a leverage swap. Iran trades a chokehold. It can reimpose any morning for a blockade Washington spent a sixth of its navy to build. Centrifuges keep spinning. Stockpile stays where it is. The map gets handed back. The weapon does not. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has framed the United States blockade itself as an act of war. That language is not random. It is the lawyer's blade in this fight. It lets Tehran cast Washington as the obstacle to peace, and it tells the world that lifting the blockade is not a Trump concession at all. It is a return to legality. But inside Iran, Araghchi is not the only voice in the room. Parliamentary Speaker Mohammad Bagher Khalibaf has already warned publicly that the strait will not stay open if the United States blockade continues. He added something colder. The status of the strait, he said, will be decided by the field, not by social media. That sentence was not aimed at Trump. That sentence was aimed at his own foreign minister. This is the fracture almost no one outside intelligence circles is naming. Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei was killed on February 28. His son was named successor. and has not consolidated authority. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps used the war to expand its parallel control over the Strait. President Masoud Pezeshkian is pushing diplomacy. Qualibaf is pushing escalation. The head of Iran's Atomic Energy Organization has said publicly that Iran will not accept any limits on enrichment. The man carrying this proposal cannot guarantee the next page of it. Trump heard all of it and answered with one sentence. The blockade stays in full force until the deal includes the nuclear program. The blockade is the leverage because it is the only leverage that has ever moved Iranian nuclear policy. Lift it before the centrifuges are addressed, and Washington walks into the next round with empty hands. And here is what makes the offer feel less like a peace plan and more like a clock. Opposition reporting has flagged signs of reconstruction at nuclear sites damaged in earlier strikes. The IAEA has not been allowed back into Iran since the war began. There is no inspection, there is no count, there is only a stockpile that disappeared from outside view, and a regime asking the world to trade for the visible problem and trust them on the invisible one. So look at the word later, the way Tehran is using it. Later, after the blockade lifts. Later, after global pressure rebuilds against any new American strike. Later, after the IRGC has had months to disperse and rebury whatever survived underground. In this proposal, later is not a stage of negotiation. It is the moment Washington's leverage stops existing. The audience for this offer was never really the White House. It was Beijing, Brussels, New Delhi, and the energy markets. Every day, Trump refuses. Tehran gets to tell those capitals the same line. We offered to open the Strait. The Americans refused. Blame them for your gasoline. The proposal was engineered to globalize the cost of saying no. That is also why Arachi's next stop is Moscow, briefing Vladimir Putin in person. Putin is not a mediator in this story. Putin is an amplifier. The shuttle through Pakistan, Oman, and Russia is not a search for peace. It is a campaign to surround Washington with foreign voices saying, take the partial deal. So picture the man at the center of all this one more time. Abbas Arachi, mid-flight again. He carries an offer his own parliament publicly contradicts. He carries an offer his own atomic chief refuses to honor. He carries an offer drafted in a country whose supreme leader's chair is still empty. He sells the visible half of a war and asks the world to believe the invisible half does not exist. Washington can hold its position for as long as it chooses. Naval analysts estimate the blockade can be sustained indefinitely, with roughly 6 destroyers in rotation. The structural choice has already been made. The Navy is already paying that price. The only thing being decided now is what Iran is buying with the time the blockade is buying for them. The United States went to war for 400 kilograms of metal sitting somewhere inside Iran. The proposal on Trump's desk offers everything except those 400 kilograms. Until that number appears on the page, every other word in the document is decoration around an empty vault. Somewhere right now, a hardened underground room in central Iran is humming. Centrifuges that survived the strikes are still spinning. Inspectors are not in the building. Cameras are not in the corridors. And on a table 11,000 kilometers away, a piece of paper is asking the President of the United States to call the war over and never ask what is inside that room. He is not going to.